We are all relatives. We all come from the same source, whether we want to agree on the name or not. We're one planet, we're one people. This is one time that we have the opportunity to step up and demonstrate that with some intelligence, because now science has bridged the gap with spirituality. And what quantum physics and quantum mechanics and quantum sciences in general is beginning to prove is the old Vedantic philosophy, that we're all energy coming from a source, we're all divine threads incarnate, and we're capable of being gods and goddesses because we have the consciousness to do so and to manifest those things in the ways that we were designed to do. And we have a real challenge with design in the questioning, the curiosity, because of how we've been structured through the various organizational development schemes, whether it be corporate or religious.
Whereas with the concept of one world, you have a sharing of responsibility, which brings each person to the level of their own accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be a better term rather than using New Age, the age of accountability. We've got to be responsible for what we do and how we act.
Welcome to One World in a New World, where ambition meets innovation in co-creating a new normal.
Explore the thoughtmosphere, embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery, embrace harmony, with self, with others, with Mother Earth.
Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives in these apocalyptic chats. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives.
Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of the human experience through discovering what is within us all.
We have a series of apocalyptic chats that peer into the depths of inner and outer realities and how we can bridge them in today's world.
Why do you do what you do? And there's the do. 3. I'm looking at the sentence now. The lower part of my screen, one short sentence, the word do 3 times, and done is the extension of do. And one wonders, what do we care? Why do we care about doing anything? Doing, period.
This is what we've been, because of how we've been programmed, that this is the process, right? You got to do in order to have, and so you can be, right? Mm-hmm. Well, flip that. It's like the Fool, right? Start with being first, because that's the core of who we are. Then the doing can take place because you have a little better sense of what to do, because you're in that being state. You're curious, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What am I here to do? Who am I? What's my purpose? How can I serve in this moment? And it really is, yes, there's an importance in looking long term as to what your life impact is to serve. And yet it's those moments in which we serve that we show up and be present. Right? Mm. Like El Bandino and the precious present. What a gift to be able to be in the moment. Then when you approach it with that attitude of what's here, what's good for me, what can I offer, how can I give, then you're not so preoccupied with what can I receive from this. And I think that may be what the majority of us have been misperceiving as the precursive notion of what can I get?
Worst thing in all the wars was always they said communication. They would say communication because I'm really emotional. And I'm talking and you already see this energy. So everybody was telling me that this was wrong. So all the time, my ego, it has been working little by little to manage my emotion. So from one side, I was in a jail. But on the other side, I train to do this better and better and better and better. So when they said that it was the worst of me, it became the best of me. Why? Because when I'm working as a coach, at that moment, it's my emotion that make the people feel close to me. And in which way? Enneagram teach me some very important thing. I think is the most important. I mean, one is the knowledge about ourselves and what we need to transcend, this vulnerability, because we do things are very good, but we are not getting better because there are this vulnerability. If we accept the vulnerability, now I don't have limits anymore. And I discovered that Enneagram is that every one of us has this vulnerability. And everyone has been working little by little the whole life to cover this vulnerability. So this is an asset.
So would you say that that's kind of a one way to discipline, is to see things as being able to observe your intentions, the intention being to live and let live, right?
Well,
and the distractions to that?
I think step one is to commit to bring out a better version of yourself, right? Step one, you have to first say, okay, number one, I'm going to unveil a brand new version of Mark J. Victor, the best one so far, and then decide what it is you're going to step up. You know, my resolution for this year was I'm going to step up everything in every area. I'm going to do better in everything that I do.
Don't you feel a little bit vulnerable in that place, though?
I don't pretend to be perfect. If I make a mistake, I say, look, sorry, I made a mistake. Sorry, I'm imperfect. And I'm the best I could ever be is an imperfect guy acting imperfectly. I try to do things appropriately and as close to perfect as possible. But I know this isn't reality. So I know I'm going to make mistakes. I'll make more mistakes in the future, but I'm going to own them. I'm going to publicly admit them, and I'm going to learn from them. And I'm going to try to. That's the most important part. I'm not going to pretend like I'm perfect. I don't set the expectation there. I'm 100% ferociously and relentlessly committed to excellence, but I know I'm never going to achieve perfection. That's, I think that's the position to me that makes the most sense.
Well, again, what's your intention? Your intention is to be your best self and recognize that, yeah, I'm going to make mistakes. That's how I learn. If we're not challenged, if we don't have those things, then, you know, the greater the challenge, the greater the learning. How business develops in these next few years, as we're coming out of a major kerfuffle and the world shifting mindset to mind flow, possibly, as far as, you know, incorporating this inner side of development now that seems to be becoming more present and available even just to talk about, right, without feeling or without being perceived as being crazy or weird, right? It's becoming more acceptable. How do you see that moving into the future and the likely events that it may precipitate in the evolution of how business is done?
Well, I think in the spirit of having more people adopt an abundance mindset, it has a place, right? So if it's part of that transition that I think we need to make from one where we're being selfish and self-centered and doing only things that are good for us and not caring about, you know, our colleagues, our family, you know, just doing what we think is right, are good things for us to achieve what we have set in our mind, and making it more about believing that there's plenty to go around, the better we're going to be. And that's in all walks of life, business, community, our home life, and so on. So to me, that's
what we do anywhere, we do everywhere, and how we behave is ubiquitous, right? The effects that it has.
I believe that to be true.
Like the healthiest way of intimately embodying is to live as an integral part of Gaia in service to self, community, and world. And at the same time, to my mind, to do this wisely, you also have to be able to understand that even that is, well, the Buddhists would call it samsara, but is one way of projecting, bringing forth a world together. It just happens to be a much more harmonious, healthy, and mutually supportive world in which we can fully unfold our unique essences and individual potential, individually and collectively. The weird path of to most unfold your individualism is in service, not in
Absolutely. Yeah,
competition.
what was the law of one says you're either in service to self or service to others. And I'm like, well, no, the ultimate service to self is service to others.
The truth is something we discover together, collaboratively, working on things. And of course, it's a tried and true model in academia, largely, right? That
it's a model.
It's
It's
formal processes for peer review and all of that stuff in science. And, we can continue working on that kind of model in other ways too.
So, this reminds me of the 1 minute manager scenario, right? Praise, point out the difficulties, and then how you can improve, right? There's another one that a friend of mine introduced me to, oh gosh, it's been almost 40 years ago now, and he called it Gifty GS. You sit in the center of your cohorts, friends, whatever, and you ask them to give you your worst, your best, and how you can improve. And the only thing you can say in response is thank you.
The attractor that is so dominant in the universe, which we have not recognized because we have simply closed our eyes to it. But the attractor is one toward unity, toward oneness, toward coherence. And that is now with sensitive people that's expressed as love, love for the other. That means being coherent with others. Means being attracted to them without recompense. Unconditionally.
Absolutely. And even in, one book that everybody refers to is The Perfect Love is fearless. Has the absence of fear, and that we've often misunderstood that, we were told we're getting dominion over the earth. Well, we didn't really understand that meant stewardship, not the dominance and control that you mentioned through the governments, the military and whatnot, who were simply working on, acquiring assets and resources and control. That this new element, it releases all that. It acquiesces to a state of oneness to begin with, but it blows the mind of those who are so intrinsically trapped into this old paradigm.
But this is really
this is anything but linear.
It's the nonlinear approach of multi-dimensionality.
I think it goes into a non-local scenery as well.
Yeah. And so I think I did not really take it that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But just,
what would you do if you did?
What a strange part of all of that is. So I told you the name of Mother Mary's name is Mater Dolorosa, which is the Latin name for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I called myself Patricia Maria Dolores. And a thing that is my ongoing theme in life, and I never shared that before, maybe a little bit, but not in the depth of what it is.
To draw those things out.
There is this ongoing pain in my body, which sometimes drives me nuts, which sometimes feels like, oh, I just need to dive into that and embrace it fully to know where this is guiding me to.
Because you can't deny it. I mean, you and I both know anytime you deny something or you keep it aside, it's going to keep reappearing in greater fashion for you to be able to pay attention to it, because it's going to get your attention. Whereas, and this is one of the things, self-love, right? You embrace all the parts of your being, no matter what, in love, just as they are, without attachment to change.
Hey there, fellow humans. And those who feel like they're from another dimension, no judgment here. It's me, Zen's AI avatar, here to deliver some next-level wisdom from the man himself. You're probably wondering why I'm your guide today. Well, Zen thought, what better way to talk about conscious leadership than through my AI sidekick? After all, who better to introduce a book about evolving leadership than someone who literally updates every day? Yep, that's me. I've still got to pay attention to the teleprompter, though. Now, Zen's been busy crafting something pretty special for all you forward-thinking leaders, dreamers, and doers out there. It's called Beyond Service, Next Level Leadership for a Conscious World. No, it's not about how to be a servant, fetch coffee, or manage paperwork. It's about stepping into a new kind of leadership, the kind that focuses on transformation, both for yourself and everyone you lead. Think of it as Zen's ultimate guide to leading with heart, mind, and a touch of cosmic wisdom. Forget the top-down approach. Forget the old-school methods. This is regenerative leadership, where empathy, mindfulness, and purposeful action come together like the perfect recipe for creating a world that actually works for everyone. Oh, and don't worry, no dry business jargon here. Zen's keeping it real and relatable as usual. Now, I know what you're thinking. Leadership? Sounds a bit corporate for my cosmic taste. But trust me, whether you're leading a team, a family, or just trying to get your cat to stop ignoring you, these insights are going to shift the way you approach everything. It's about how you show up in the world, not just as a leader, but as a conscious human being. Beyond Service shows you how to be the kind of leader who inspires change, builds trust, and leads with purpose, all while keeping your cool even when the universe throws a curveball, and it will. And here's the kicker. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. Zen's got your back. Well, I've got your back, technically. We're all in this crazy cosmic journey together, and this book is your roadmap for navigating leadership in a world that needs more compassion, more action, and definitely more humor. So are you ready to lead in a way that lifts others while evolving yourself? I mean, if an AI like me can figure it out, you've got this. Let's dive into Beyond Service and take that leadership game to a whole new level.
What are the kinds of questions that you find as a coach help facilitate that moving forward and clarification of perhaps a better life path for those who have been disrupted recently?
Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, he says, take your life journey, write things that have brought you joy down, just write them all down, and then look at it again and see the ones that really brought joy into your life. They're all joyful, but which are the most joyful?
What really made your heart sing?
Yeah, which ones were that satisfy you like your heart's desire? Draw a line through it. That will be the map, the roadmap to your purpose. The past is prologue. The human condition has always been know ourselves. I love quotes because the quotes from the thought leaders in history, the answer to that statement you just made is an Einstein quote. The intuitive mind is a special gift. However, I'm a realist, and I believe that in spite of my fascination with technology and with the world, currently fascinated with ChatGPT, I think I use storytelling as the oldest tool in the tech stack, to decode what makes us human. And if I help my clients listen to their own narrative using that Shakespearean past as prologue, in that narrative are all the forces that shape them. Some nature, just in the family, some nurture, people, places, experiences, and trainings that have shaped them. And when they acknowledge those people, places, experiences, and trainings, and metaphorically write each place in person on a 3x5 card, spread them out on the conference room table and look at them in awe and say, oh my God, look at all the things that I've learned in my decades of existence.
Right.
Look at all the people, that's what I got from her. With the 60 things or so that I've got on the top of the table, I then look into the world and say, it's 2023. What do I see in the world that I can fix? If I've taken this and I know my narrative, I know the source material for all my values, my principles and beliefs and biases. Before I want to sell them something, I got to understand them.
I was counseled in doing positive thinking at one time, and I found that somewhat difficult to do in some circumstances, because if my inner experience was in turmoil and I was, feeling quite despairing, it felt like a form of self-denial to just overlay on top of that.
Inauthentic.
Yeah, it felt inauthentic. And it didn't really deal with the, the hijack I was in, the emotional state I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your point around observing that state arising, because you can't control it. You can't stop it arising. I often say to people, you can't choose goosebumps. You can't choose a knot in the stomach. You
Right.
can't choose sweaty palms. It just arises. And the thoughts and feelings that come with it. So as you suggest, I find the quietening of the mind comes from being with that, not having to fight it, not having to work against it, think positively through it, any of that stuff, but just being with it and noticing it arise, noticing its transience, because it is a transient state of mind that moves through us.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we can detach, as it were, and I always think, get on a ceiling or on a tree and look down on ourselves, observe ourselves experiencing these sensations, thoughts and feelings from a figurative distance.
And being curious about them too.
And being curious about it, without overthinking it. I think that's
Or
the
thinking, period. This is one of the things that occurred to me years ago, and I think quantum physics is backing it up now. We can't think our way through a system built on vibration. We have to feel our way through it.
Exactly.
Now, in doing that, quieting the mind, being able to observe the thoughts, and eventually, did you find that as you began to observe them, that eventually they began to dissipate and you could choose thoughts that were more present?
Yeah, I have a phrase that says, that often springs to mind when life gets a little tumultuous. So I'll notice it. So I'll notice the knot in the stomach or the sweaty palms. And I see that as a signal that I'm not thinking clearly about something. So I see it as a kind of warning
What do you
sign.
see potentially happening? The escalation of a continuing escalation of intelligence, both artificial and human, and how that is going to shape our ability to learn how to work together better.
I keep thinking about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the TM guru, who had a brilliant phrase, which was, when the intelligence, capital I, intelligence, becomes intelligent. And you can see that's where humanity is going. As more, what I see in all the disciplines and all the different spiritual traditions is that the consciousness is on the rise. That's part of what I wanted to talk about with respect to Mother Divine, the Divine Feminine, that her nature in this planet is very tricky. She's everything in the creation, meaning like nature is very beautiful. There's beautiful waterfalls and, canyons and beaches and sunsets and this and that. And there's also tsunamis and earthquakes and wildfires and, total wipeouts. And all of that is her. All of it. The totality of all the positive, all the negative is this nature of the mother in our creation, this big smoke and mirrors show that we think is all so real and compelling. And part of the... People will often say to me, don't you think it's really more negative now than it's ever been in our humanity's history? I mean, there's a lot of crap going on the planet that's just hideous.
Oh, we just know about it.
Hideous. We just know about it, but also there is enough consciousness now that we look at it and go, that is unacceptable, has to change. Absolutely. Whereas I would say 100 years ago, people saw it and went, that's how it is. Or took the other side of it, the side of violence and power over and retribution.
Right, like the Wild West all over again.
Yes. So I feel that the more we see the negativity for what it is, we see these conflicts as being horrific. We see the devastation of human life and the planet and all these different things as unacceptable.
Right. And it's not just thinking about it. It's the feeling of it.
it's a symptom that the consciousness has come up high, like to a higher watermark, if you will,
Adopted at
worldwide.
birth, and my adopted mother, God rest her soul, had lots of generational trauma that was back then in the late 70s, early 80s, wasn't really a thing. And she emotionally and mentally and physically abused me for years. So my first near-death experience, I was 3.5, 4 years old. That's when my spirituality came to light within myself. It was that first near-death experience, and I came back with all my clear gifts present and available to me. But I was still under the umbrella of being abused. So I was
right. And as a kid, it's hard to figure out, well, really what's going on, because you're in conflict inside, right?
Well, that was it, right? It made the extremes so much greater.
Yeah.
Because on the spiritual side, you have these gifts, and your guides are your spiritual guides are telling you you're here for this purpose. You're here to do amazing things. You're here to live into this. You're here to be a living example. You're here to show others.
I think anytime that you're communicating with someone, you have to be empathetic. You have to say, I have to put aside whatever is my goal, my agenda is, or whatever, and ask the first question is, what am I going to say or do? How does that, what is the other person trying to do? If I understand where they're coming from, then I often start a conversation with, I'm not going to talk about myself till you tell me who you are. And then I'll enter the conversation with something that matches up with them, because I want to talk about something they're interested in. I can talk about myself all day long. I've proven that.
Isn't that marketing 101? Understand your audience before you say anything to them. Engage.
It is.
I had a mentor, who's 20 years my senior, years ago, said, and he's a lawyer. He said, there's really no conflict. There's just miscommunication. The two parties show up to the table with different dictionaries, and they need to share them instead of speak.
I want to spend more meaningful time with people that I care and I love the most. So I think there's a spiritual awakening happening. And I'm involved in a lot of groups internationally, not just in the United States, Europe.
I noticed that within a few months after the lockdown came, there was all kinds of virtual groups popping up. I belong to many of them.
Sure.
These kinds of conversations of, okay, what do we do? How do we learn how to work together better? What kind of skill sets do we have that we can share and collectively collaborate and make things better for all of us? Because it seemed like the major realization was that, oh, I do have agency. And I can choose, and I can make my life better in ways without harming others.
Absolutely. And my message kind of towards the end of my talks, usually, even then, was, in the end, acts of kindness, like reach out. And again, I got pushback from people say, well, what am I, my brother's keeper? This is during the lockdown.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I said, you're not your brother's keeper. Your mother's keeper, and your sister's keeper, and your neighbor's keeper, and the homeless person down the street, because in the end, we're all brothers and sisters. And we're all
well, and this is ancient philosophy.
I know.
My opening, namaste. The divine in me recognizes the divine in you. That's Sanskrit, 15,000 years old. In la ketch, Mayan, means I am another you.
We would probably have to have a podcast to tell this whole thing, because it was literally out of this world experience that I had, and I asked for it. I remember I was there and I was not in a good place. I had just had a project. I'd lost my house. I was in a really emotionally, I was just, I was in a burnout situation with adrenal failure, and I remember very specifically asking for this. I had a conversation. I said, look, I'm an engineer. I kind of need to know if there's more to the story than what I have come to believe is real.
Great question.
Because, at that time, I had actually gone bankrupt, and I was very suicidal. And I was literally had nothing to lose. So I said, look.
Only way to go is up, right?
Yeah, I just said, look, I'm ready to give up, as you know. So if this would be a really good time to bring it on, or I'm out of here. It was like that kind of conversation. Okay, it was about as deep as it gets, right? That was my existential crisis. And I mean, I called it, the divine just like came inside me and started moving me.
I think a lot of it starts with how leaders show up themselves. And I think where our work has kind of gone over the last several years is realizing that, you know, it started in this place of, hey, let's take some of these great ways of doing things, great ways of thinking about things that we experienced at Amazon, bring them into other organizations, obviously in a way that's fit for them. But we started to realize over time as well that it's like there's a whole other layer to this stuff that's beyond just like this management stuff and leadership stuff that a lot of people really talk about. I think that's where we kind of get into, you know, when you introduced me, you mentioned vertical development consultant. And when we're talking about vertical, really what we're talking about is like the level of awareness from which we understand the world around us. And, you know, we kind of progress through these stair steps, if you will, as we evolve, as we grow ourselves. And the prevailing world is kind of stuck at a level we'd call achievist. You know, it's all about what you see in most organizations, how we hit those targets this month or this quarter, winning, you know, whatever it might be. And it's ignoring what you were kind of pointing out a minute ago. It's all about people, and it's really everything. Our organization, the community, the environment that we work in, it's systems all the way up and down, man. Everything is connected to everything else.
That I've embraced my nonlinear weirdness, I became very linear. How interesting is that, Zen? So I was always fighting the linear system, and now that I understand how nonlinear I am, I'm okay with the linear system. Not always, but generally speaking.
Yeah.
And I use it even myself now. What the hell?
Well,
right?
Here's how I see that, and I think that you may too. The observer, right? The observer is the nonlinear thinker, and so when you're able to observe, then you can choose where to become linear, and that makes a huge difference. I had a really similar thing. I mentioned the aerospace company. Maybe it was a country. And at 26, then at 29, my life did the same thing. At 30, divorced. I had 4 kids. Divorced. She took the kids back to Indiana. I was left here in Phoenix by myself. Excruciatingly depressing for a short time. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. I have an opportunity here now to get back in touch with me.
And welcome to our video on the power of partnering. This insightful book by Zen Benefiel offers real-world wisdom essential for everyone, from business leaders to team members, aiming to enhance collaboration and partnership skills.
The book delves into building trust, emphasizing that partnering goes beyond tasks. It's about creating a foundation of trust, enabling teams to thrive under pressure and achieve remarkable results together.
Encouraging transparency is another key aspect. When information flows freely, teams remain aligned, goals are clear, and success becomes a shared journey, fostering a collaborative environment.
Embracing collective accountability is crucial in true partnerships. It ensures that everyone shares responsibility for success, leaving no one behind and valuing every voice in the team.
Zen Benefiel introduces the concept of holistic leadership, where personal growth is as vital as professional achievement. It's about evolving both as individuals and as a cohesive team.
Whether you're a manager or team leader, this book is your guide to mastering the art of partnering. It offers strategies to improve collaboration in any space, enhancing teamwork and productivity.
The Power of Partnering is available for free to Kindle Unlimited subscribers. Don't miss the chance to unlock the keys to building trust, fostering innovation, and leading effectively together.
Thank you for watching. Transform how you work with others by getting your copy today. Let's redefine what's possible together and embrace the power of effective partnerships.
The only reason people find it harder is because they have been following, everybody else's agenda so much that they've forgotten how to just like you said, that when you are not thinking, when you were completely between thoughts, when you were completely in that pause, when you heard that voice. So it's like people have to give that, that opening for themselves so that they can actually hear their own voice or hear what they really, really want, right? And I think that is going to open doors for everyone, and it's going to get multiplied because of the 100 monkey effect. It's going to multiply because of the ripple effect we're creating. And I believe that the way people have spent their time and energy is going to change, because I feel like a lot of things that we see in a society that works right now, like people who are people who become really famous, let's say, because everybody wants to hear them. That to me is like an old paradigm. I think people want result, and I am looking for that type of community and tribe, because I'm all about let's walk the talk.
Right.
Okay, let's not just talk about it, and let's not just look important. Let's actually.
Well, you got the awareness, you got the knowledge, you're responsible at that point. Why would you not want to walk the
other things
talk?
happen. I mean, can those episodes, like, can they also come in and make the connection?
Sure, something like that. It's possible that I would think, in the fortuitousness of the opportunity gives, like, for instance, with your sister, my heartfelt condolences. I can only imagine what that's like. And yet life goes on, and there's a certain recognition of, okay, these things do happen. And is that trauma from the separation, the absence, the feeling of wanting her there, is that going to stifle your ability of receiving other connections that are there normally, that because of that, there's resistance to it now, because there's this angst of, oh, I'm going to get attached to that, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm not going to allow it to happen in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. And I could say, and in some of my books, at least also in the new one I'm working on right now, I'm talking about this also, that the fear of losing, because there have been many years in my life where I have been walking around conscious or unconsciously with fear of losing. And when I go back in time, I was in a session, like hypnosis session to call that. And I went back to that moment I just talked about, and then other moments on my timeline. And I can see and recognize now that fear of losing had been part of my journey. And that's also in relation to money, loving relationships.
But the one place where I have the most hope, and where I personally feel committed totally, is the environmental movement. I think it may be because the environmental movement is about caring for all of life. It's not one group as against the other group, whites against blacks, blacks against whites, Jews, Palestinians. No, it's about all of life. That's the unit of concern for the environmental movement. And the kind of ego tripping and narrow-mindedness and inability to tolerate disagreement, I haven't found that in the environmental movement. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying I personally haven't seen it, and I've looked at a good deal of it. I mean, one of my major areas is religious environmentalism, and I just haven't found it there. And it's also left wing. I mean, I'm on the editorial boards of both the leading religious journal of the environment and the leading left-wing journal of the environment, because political and spiritual, that's what I try to put together.
Sure.
And these people,
they all, those need to come together.
Yes.
It's all about, in my opinion, let me ask you this too. Does it seem like it's more like just this essence of common sense? And
the same breath of life that comes through me
Sure.
is the same that comes through everyone else.
Right.
And
even
for some,
with the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. Well, for some reason, we've been, and I don't want to talk about why I think so, but for many reasons, we've been conditioned to think that we're separate. And I think one of the outcomes of that is that we've disconnected from who we truly are.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes kind of a dumbing down, of what we are truly capable of. Yeah, and that can happen. And the thing with emotions, as you know, there's a contagion that happens
with happiness,
where
especially, right?
happiness, anger, sadness, people feel you because you know, through our brains, we're connected that way. We're connected in so many ways. Neurologically, there's an empathic connection. And so they're gonna feel it. I know. I have some clients.
So, I mean, when I first stepped into the middle of the room,
Yeah.
I was scared to death because I knew I had to get everybody on the same page and do it effectively for the benefit of the project,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people, and the people understanding the principles to get them to that place. Then often are these kind of conversations where I had, a politician in one of them that
Really?
he began pontificating, right?
Yes.
And so I had to gently honor his desire to speak and yet redirect it back toward the project. So by asking the kinds of questions to get him to agree that, oh gosh, yes, I really didn't need to go into that.
And then I had to sit with it and then release it. And that when I released it to the executive with responsibility, that's when I found peace again.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a discernment capacity that we have that we're building, right? To what feels congruent, what feels harmonious, where's the resonance in it. Thank you so much for your time and your insight and wisdom shared today.
I thought, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, what can you offer as a parting gift that folks can take away and apply on a daily basis?
Organizations that are putting the earth and the indigenous on the board to have that voice, or the future generations. So I think it's happening, but most organizations are not open to extraordinary experience, and they're not open to the margins. And they're not looking at the margins for the new information they need to transform.
Right.
I find them what happens in organizations, what I hear from people, I'm quite bored by, because it's no different than it was 15 years ago. Often.
Very true. Stakeholder driven, dividend for the stakeholder driven.
Yeah.
Profit. So
shareholder driven.
What I found, and maybe, try this on, see if this makes sense. We've been operating under a profit over people and planet agenda.
Yeah.
However we want to look at it, that's the essence of it.
Yeah.
What we're headed towards is a people and planet over profit agenda, which is, it flips the profit motivation.
But my focus tends to be 99% on the industries that I'm in, not on. I don't think a lot about the world environment.
Well, you're more localized rather than globalized. There's still that effect that the local has on the global. And do you see, at least in this near future, that there is an upswing in the kinds of behaviors in business that we've been discussing, the authenticity, the honesty, the integrity, the emotional intelligence, and all of those kinds of things? Do you see that making an impact?
Unfortunately, I see the reverse. I see that that we're losing touch with the consumers, and the quality in this country has been going down for decades. So I'm not an optimist.
But when you look at the disconnect, people today are so disconnected from spirituality. Okay. I like my little town. We've got a lot of haters in this town. We've got a lot of, red hats in my town. But every Sunday, the churches are full. But as soon as the church empties out, they go right back to being the same nasty people they always are.
Right. But they've been absolved for the last.
Right. Oh, yeah. Mama de Papa and all the rest. And the mamas and the papas. But for me, spirituality is the choices you make from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. Because a lot of people will ask me, Zen, they'll say, you cover such horrific topics, you know, such terrible news, this and that. How do you sleep at night? First of all, I start my day with gratitude and the Reiki principles. I take care of myself physically. You know, there's not hardly a day I don't go to the gym and get my exercise and don't eat, you know, every day, try to eat as right as I can. But when I get in bed at night, how do I end my day? That's when I send out my long distance Reiki to people that have asked me for it. So if you start your day cursing your alarm clock, you're going to have a crappy day.
You think?
It's just simple. Today sets tomorrow.
Right.
You know, and
I was walking from the cafeteria to the dorm one day, and all of a sudden I hear these self-deprecating voices all saying, you dirty, rotten, you know, you SOB, you stupid, that, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it all began with you. And of course, me hearing you, I'm thinking it's me. Yeah. And they're all projected at me. And it happened, you know, I put it together when the other students were walking by me, still got paranoid about me being the brunt of it. And I locked myself in my dorm room for a couple of days. And finally a friend of mine came and said, where you been? What's going on? And I explained to him what was happening. And he said, you know, are they your voices? Are they your voice, or are they others' voices? And at that point, I realized they were the others.
I think we should say at this point that your friend, I believe it was your friend Gary.
Yes.
This is a person, a fellow college student, with whom you had begun experimenting in telepathy.
Telepathy, psychokinesis, bilocation eventually. We did all kinds of really wild, wacky, weird stuff that...
So he understood when you began describing these voices that you had, he understood that you and he both had shared a number of what I would call parapsychological experiences.
Absolutely.
And so when you told him you had voices, he began to think there might be some kind of a parapsychological dimension.
Right. And he was the observer rather than the participant, so he could ask the right questions to get me to see clearly.
And I gather that what you came up with in your discussions with him is that you were hearing voices coming from other people in the vicinity.
Yeah. Yeah. They were
telepathically, so to speak.
5 to 7 feet away, which is, as I learned later, when we're in the past or future, our aura is approximately 5 to 7 feet in diameter. And in the present, it's 5 or 6 times that big. So these kids, other kids like me, you know, they're focused in something that just happened or something that's about to happen that they're not comfortable or secure with, but they're not in the present. So if they were in the present, then they probably wouldn't be having those thoughts to begin with.
So you were, in effect, picking up on the low self-esteem of other people around you.
And my own.
And your own.
Because that's, you know, I was there with them.
That's why perhaps you were open to theirs, because you had some of your own to address as well.
Sure. And I think, isn't that kind of, you find resonance with where you are, not necessarily where you think you are.
Right. But in any case, this is an example of voices you would not want to trust because they're putting you down or putting somebody down.
True. And yet, maybe some of them have value and that I need to look at some of the things. Am I, you know, what am I insecure about? What am I not doing? Where am I not stepping up to what I'm capable of doing?
Yeah.